Hi everyone, Katarina here. In today's video, I'm going to be using some of the goodies that came with the latest Simply Cards and Papercraft magazine. This is issue 253. And the stamps and dies are by Spellbinders. They are just stunning, really gorgeous. I had trouble trying to decide which ones to use from the sets. Today I'm also focusing on my favorite ever techniques in paper crafting. It is heat embossing. I'm going to be using a trio of wow embossing powders. The colors are Chinese lantern, pomegranate, and silk brocade. These came as a pack of 3, so I know that these colors work very well together. I'm covering a piece of cardstock just from my scrap box really with embossing ink, wow embossing ink pad, and I sprinkled Chinese lantern all over this. I'm using my heat tool on the second setting, on the higher setting, and I'm melting this powder. You can see how lovely and shiny it is turning. As lovely as it already looks, I decide to do this one more time. So I come back with my ink pad and I sprinkle the same color of embossing powder all over this, and I'm going to heat set this one more time. I feel this just gave me much better coverage for what I needed these pieces for today's project. So once this is done off camera, I'm gonna go and repeat the same process on a separate piece of cardstock using the pomegranate and then on a separate one, the silk brocade. I'll come back and show you what the results look like. So here are the 3 gorgeous colors, and I heat embossed all of these twice, just like I demonstrated with the first color for you. For die cutting, I'm going to be using the diamond shape and all the floral shapes on this die set today. You can see I'm lifting the foliage one as well, but then I put that back. I will use it. I will show you in a little moment what I decided to do with those. So I'm putting all the floral ones and the diamond shape on this, and I'm going to die cut these twice of each color, and I will come back and show you once it's all done. It takes a little while to die cut this, and I didn't want to waste your time watching me die cutting. So here you can see that glittery piece of cardstock, which I used the heat embossing technique exactly the same as before, only this time I used In the Park Wow Embossing Glitter by Catherine Pula, and this is what I cut out all the foliage out of. For the card base, I'm using a piece of cardstock measuring 12 by 6, and on the 12-inch side I'm scoring down at 2 and 4 inches. I flip the cardstock onto the other side and scored it down at 2 and 4 inches again. A repeat at the other end of the cardstock. I'm going to fold in the first score line, and on the outer score line I'm folding it out. This is why I wanted to score on both sides of my cardstock. So basically I created one of my favorite gatefold cards. I made these on my channel before in all different sizes. I will link to them in the description box below if you wish to check them out. So today I decided I wanted this to be a diamond fold, and it's very easy to do. I'm putting a pencil mark down halfway on the 6-inch side at 3 inches, and I'm going to pull that pencil line from that corner down to the 3-inch mark that I just created, and I'm only working on the very outermost flap on my card. Now, it's very optional to pull these pencil lines. Normally I wouldn't do it, but for the purposes of this video, I think it's just easier to demonstrate. So again, I'm going to pull the pencil line from the corner to the 3-inch mark, and the same on the other side. Now, you can use just your scissors to cut those triangles off. I'm using my trimmer in here. It works just as well. I done similar cards using my scissors before. It's really your preference. What do you like using to cut pieces like this off? This was really easy to do, such a lovely technique to create a real effective card. Furthermore, I will need 2 pieces of cardstock. I'm using white here again, one that measures 3.5 by 5.5, and one that measures 3 3/4 by 5 3/4. So I'm starting off with the smaller piece, and I'm going to mark halfway at 1 3/4 of an inch, on the longer side at 2 3/4, 1 3/4 again, and 2 3/4. So I have dots halfway through each side. I'm going to join those lines just with a thin pencil line in there. Now, pulling a pencil line again is optional. I'm only doing this for the purposes of this video in here. What I need to do is cut along those lines. So if you're using your scissors, it's probably best to have the pencil lines. On the larger pieces of cardstock, it's 1 7/8 of an inch, 2 7/8 of an inch, again 1 7/8, and 2 7/8. And I'm just going to repeat exactly the same process again. Once that's done, I'm just taking my trimmer and I'm going to cut along those lines on both of these pieces. Now, you might already have some diamond shape dies in your craft stash that you could use to cut these out. I don't think these are too hard to make free-handed either. If there's a little bit of a difference, it's very easy fix, as you will see later on in this video. So I'm just rubbing away all those pencil lines. I've got two pieces of cardstock to 2 by 6 inches, and I'm going to take those two and the larger one of my diamonds that we just cut, and one of my distress oxiding pads, and the color I'm using today is Crackling Campfire. As for the two pieces that I just cut, I'm going to cover them completely in this color. This color goes so well with the Chinese lantern embossing powder, and therefore, of course, with all the other ones, it will create a lovely combination with them, you'll see. So once this piece is done too, I'm going to take the diamond and I'm only going to cover the edges of that one. I don't need to cover the whole diamond because you will not be able to see anything else other than the outer edges of that one. So there's quite a lot of ink on my glass mat in there, which I do not want to waste. So I'm going to spritz some water on that. I'm going to bring a piece of watercolor cardstock in, and I'm going to use it to soak up all that ink, and I will be able to put that aside and use it in some future project. I think it is a gorgeous color, and it would be just a shame to waste. For the next part of this project, I'm bringing in my favorite platform, stamping platform from Creative Craft Products, and I'm taking the stamp, the diamond shape stamp that coordinates with the die that I've been using, and I've cut out 3 white pieces already in advance, and I'm going to show you the way I like to stamp these pieces. So I've cut out 1 diamond from the middle of that piece of cardstock, and I'm lining up my stamp in it. Then I am placing one of the pieces, one of the diamond pieces that I already cut out of white cardstock. I'm using my anti-static bag because I will be using heat embossing on this, adding my Versamark ink onto the stamp. And it is the Versamarking pad for no other reason really than I just re-ink that, so I know it is nice and juicy for embossing little details like this. So once I'm happy with my stamping, I'm going to sprinkle my embossing powder on this. And the first one I'm using is the pomegranate. It's lovely detail on that stamp. I love how this is turning out. So then I'm gonna come back and do the same process over again, only this time I'm going to use the silk brocade, and then I'm going to use the Chinese lantern on my last piece as well. So I'm using one for each color today, and it is very easy to come back and keep lining it up because I don't have to reposition my stamp because it's been well positioned in there. The piece of cardstock is well held together with my 4 magnets in there, so I just have to add another piece of diamond shaped cardstock in the middle and keep stamping. So once they are all stamped, I'm just going to take my heat embossing tool and heat set them all. And as I'm using my heat tool, you can see how lovely all the tiny details have picked up in here. It's magical. I love heat embossing. To make the most of the lovely properties of distress oxiding, so I'm going to add some water to these. So I'm going to use some bigger droplets straight from the palm of my hands, just clapping on top of these cardstocks. And then I'm going to spray directly from my very fine mist spray bottle on these as well. So you get a combination of larger droplets and then smaller ones as well. I only quite recently started using distress oxidings in this way, and I am in love with this technique. So these two pieces will be going behind the diamond flaps that we just created, and I want to make sure that they fit into that area properly. Now, because of the score lines and the bulking, I need to cut away just a smidge, just literally like a hairline from this, to make sure that it fits properly behind that little flap and it does not overhang on the side. Once I made sure they were the right size, I'm just going to add some quick grab glue on the back of them, and I'm going to glue them on that area behind the diamond flaps, and I'm making sure there's no border around them, so these are covering the whole area on the front of my card. This is where I'm going to fix up any imperfections on my diamonds. As I mentioned earlier, these are hand cut. So on one of the sides, the border wasn't even. So I just put a little pencil mark where I thought it should have been going, and it is as thin as a little hairline that I needed to cut away to have it lined up perfect. Then the same again on this smaller diamond. Once I set them on top of each other, it's not perfectly lined up. So there's a little bit on the top and a little on the bottom that I feel should have been cut away. So I'm just adding a little dot with my pencil, and then I am lining up that dot with my trimmer, cutting it away. And now just to mention, I think there was only like a millimeter in the difference. Even if I had left it that way, it would have been perfect. I just wanted to demonstrate it for you on this video. If these things don't turn out to be perfect, they are very, very easy fix. So now I'm bringing in all the small diamonds that I cut. So I have 9 altogether, 2 solid colors and 1 of the heat embossed detail of the stamp. So in here, I'm trying to arrange them in a way that I am happy to have them. And once I am happy with the setting, I'm going to come in and you'll see I'm going to add foam pads behind every single one of these squares to arrange them on top of this white diamond piece. I'm just adding a little piece of foam pad or a foam square and some liquid glue as well on every single one of these pieces, and that will lift them away from the background lovely. It will create a lovely dimension. So I will go ahead and do this to all 9 pieces, and then I will come back and show you the result. Once all 9 of these small diamonds are in place, I have to adhere this one onto the top of the one that we inked up the edges of earlier on. And I'm going to make sure all that glue is spread out evenly and properly, so none of these sides or corners will try to lift away from that diamond when we are opening our card. I'm going to use some foam pads to adhere this to my card base, and I'm just going to use my ruler as a guide of where I should be adding my foam pads, because obviously I only have to add these onto 1/2 of this diamond. So I'm just covering all that half, and then I'm going to cut some of these foam pads down to smaller as I need them. Once I remove the backing, I'm going to reinforce them just with a little bit of a liquid glue as well. I want to make sure that this bond is nice and strong, and I am going to glue this on 1/2 of my gatefold. For the inside of my cardstock, I'm going to cut a piece 3 3/4 by 5 3/4 and another one 3.5 by 5.5. The larger piece I'm going to ink up with that same crackling campfire just alongside the edges, and I'm just going to add some water splatters to all that inking as well, just exactly the same way I done it earlier on. And the rest of this ink on my glass mat I'm going to pick up with that same piece of cardstock that I inked up earlier on. And I'm going to set this aside, let it dry for some another future project. I'm gluing the smaller piece onto the inked piece, and once this is nicely lined up, I'm going to add some glue on the back of that. I'm going to glue it on the inside of my card. So now it really is time to decorating, my favorite part of card making, and I'm going to pick out some of these flowers to decorate my cards from today. Not all of these, obviously, there's quite a lot in there. I will be putting some of these away in a little bag and use them for a future project. First, however, I have to pick a sentiment, and I'm gonna go with "Until further notice, celebrate everything." I think it's such a lovely sounding sentiment, and it is from the stamp set that came with the magazine. And because it is a new sentiment, I'm conditioning it a little bit to make sure it will stamp perfectly. I've decided to do heat embossing in here, so I'm going to use the same embossing powder I used on some of those flowers, and I'm picking it up with my stamping platform using my Versamark and stamping it down. Now, when I have a look at it in here, I think I just pressed down a little bit too hard, so I shift my paper up higher a bit, the cardstock, and I'm going to stamp it one more time. This time I'm applying much less pressure, and this one looks so much better. You'll see in a wee minute, just a little pressure can make such a huge difference. On the one that I stamped first, all the letters will be like muddled up. You can't really, well, you can read the sentiment if you look closely, but it's just all those defined lines on the lovely fine font that they just kind of disappear, they mush together. So you'll see it and the end result in here. So I'm gonna go with that top one that is so much better defined, and I'm going to just take my long blade scissors and I'm going to cut around the sentiment. I add some strong double-sided tape behind my sentiment. I will be layering this on top of some of the leftover panels of the heat embossed ones that I created earlier on, and it just works better with double-sided tape on top of those. So I'm choosing which color I want to go for. And also, I just as placeholders for now, I'm placing some flowers and some of the foliage in there just to see where my sentiment should be going. I'm layering this up on top of that heat embossed piece using the same long bladed scissors. I'm just cutting a little frame around the sentiment. I also pop the sentiment on some foam pads and place it on my card. And now I'm going to just use my hot glue to add all the different foliage and flowery bits onto the front of my card. Decorating a card like this is very new to me. I don't think I've done too many of these before. I think it is just there's very little contrast of that white. I mean, you can see some of the edges of the diamonds in there, but other than that, in the background, because the whole panels are covering the whole front of the card and all, there's otherwise very little contrast of the white. In hindsight, I could have probably moved those white diamonds differently, so the flowers are not covering those up too much, but then again, the flowers wouldn't have popped away from the background again. So it was just a new technique for me to try, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the card turned out just beautiful, very different from my previous cards, but I am really happy with it. So I'm just adding a little flower with some foliage on the inside of the card too, just because I have some left over, and just why not make it matching on the inside as well. But please stay tuned, because in a little minute I will show you a card like this with different color combinations, giving a completely different vibe. And here is the finished card. Just high lovely. All the shine of the heat embossing just really makes a lovely statement. I think the crackling campfire matched the color perfectly. And as I said earlier on, I have a different color inspiration for the card, just like this. And using exactly the same kit, the same stamp and die set from Simple Cards and Papercraft magazine. The distress oxiding I used was peacock feathers. But once I applied it, it looked too bright, just too fresh with all the other colors. So I came in with a little bit of gather twigs, and I went around all the edges of the cardstock just to mute them down a little bit on the inside as well, and on that diamond there too. So I didn't use flowers, I just used a little foliage die for this one. And the trio of embossing powders, I chose a vintage turquoise, Turkish coffee, and tarnished brass. And this is another gorgeous set. This card would be perfect for a lady also, but could very well be given as a masculine card, I think. The sentiment that I chose is the hello, which I cut out of one of the heat embossed panels, and the shadow die that also comes in the kit and the die set I cut out of vellum, just to add a little bit of a chance for the sentiment to pop away from the busy background. And then I stamped my friend using one of the embossing powders, and similarly on my previous card I just backed it up on some of the heat emboss panel, and I popped it up on foam as well, and I just added onto the front of my card. So here are the two beautiful cards. Stay tuned for some close-ups in here. I think both of these done are just so beautiful. Leave me a comment, which color combination is your favorite out of the two? If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so and hit the notification bell to make sure you get notified anytime I upload new videos. I really am grateful that you watched this video, and I will be back very soon with another lovely one. Bye!